Grenade by Alan Gratz, Part 1, pages 108 to 113. Ray, deceased. Ray looked at the picture he'd taken from the schoolroom as he and his platoon continued their march south. The strangest thing about the photo was that no one was smiling. It was like they all knew they were going to end up dead in that classroom. Ray wondered if the sailors on the battleships would still have fired if they knew they were killing school children. Whole villages of innocent people. But he had done that. So why should the sailors be any different? Big John put an arm around Ray's neck and gave him a playful headlock. Still a softie after all this time, huh, Barbecue? Ray tried to smile. Big John liked to talk tough, and he was tough. But Big John did have a heart inside that big barrel chest of his. Ray was sure of it. It had just been hardened over by combat. Ray had learned to hate the Japanese as much as Big John and the other old-timers did, but he still held out hope Big John would start to see the Okinawans differently. The big guns of the U.S. Navy fleet offshore erupted like thunder, and Ray and Big John froze. The battleships kept up a constant bombardment on the southern part of the island all day, and like the rain, everybody had just gotten used to it by now. But this was something new. "It's different this time," Ray said. He was surprised to find he'd been around long enough to realize it. "I hear 16-inch, 5-inch, anti-aircraft rockets. They're shooting everything at once." Big John nodded. "What is it? What's happening?" Zimmer asked. "Has to be a Jap counterattack. Big one," Big John said. They all waited while Gonzalez radioed in. He blinked in surprise when he finally got through and learned what it was. "They're celebrating," he told them. "Germany surrendered. Hitler committed suicide. The Nazis are through." Ray felt himself go slack. He knew he should be happy about the news. The war in Europe had been going on for 6 long years, and it had cost the lives of millions of people, soldiers and civilians alike. And he was glad it was over, for the sake of the people who were still fighting it. But it didn't change anything for Ray or his squad. Looking around at the rest of the Marines, he could see that most of them felt the same way. But that's great, isn't it?" Zimmer asked, seeing all the gloomy faces around him. He hadn't been on Okinawa long enough to understand. "It's good and all," Big John said, "but Nazi Germany might as well be on the moon for all it matters to us." Another sergeant brought a sack of mail up through the lines, and everyone gathered around to see if they had gotten a letter from home. Ray had a letter from his mother. It was mostly about planting the new corn crop back on the farm in Nebraska and what his young cousins were up to. But she had included a photograph, too. It was a picture of Ray and his father at the state fair, mugging for the camera in silly pirate costumes. Ray had an eye patch and a fake beard and an old-fashioned flintlock pistol, and Pa wore a bandana and brandished a wooden cutlass. They were laughing and leaning into each other, a loving father and son. Ray figured his mother had sent him the picture to remind him that his father wasn't always a terrible person. And for a moment, it worked. Ray smiled to himself at the memory of that day, and he got homesick all over again. But then Ray remembered a night not long after the one at the fair, when his pa had stormed drunk from the house, leaving broken furniture in his wake. Ma had begged Ray not to judge his father too harshly. "He's not the man I married," she told Ray. "He was different before the war." They were both different now, Ray and his father, but they were still the happy people in the photograph, too. Weren't they? Could they be both at once? "What'd you get, Busco?" Gonzalez asked one of the other Marines. "Letter from my sweetheart, Sarah," Busco beamed. "She's training to be a teacher back in North Carolina. Met her on Atlantic Beach when I was down there training at Camp Lejeune." "Gonna move in with her parents when you get back?" Zimmer kidded him. "I hope not. Her daddy runs a funeral home." "Hey, get this," Zimmer said. He held up a piece of paper. "I got a letter from the Missouri Department of Transportation. They say if I don't pay off my traffic tickets, they're gonna come arrest me." That got a lot of laughs. Now that I'd like to see, Ray said. You ought to let him do it, said Big John. Even jail'd be better than this ever-loving rain. As they got closer to the front lines, they passed exhausted soldiers headed north for a break. They were bloody and bandaged and muddy. They stumbled along, dog-tired, their heads down and eyes on the ground. On the rare occasion that one of them looked up, Ray saw that 1,000-yard stare. They looked like ghosts. Ray felt a lead weight grow heavier in his stomach, and it got harder and harder to pick up his feet and move forward. One of the ghosts glanced at Ray for a second as they passed. Take plenty of grenades with you down there, Marine, he said. Farther on, Ray saw the evidence of the hard-fought battle alongside the muddy road. Empty ammo boxes, spent rifle clips, bloody bandages, bullet-riddled jackets and trousers. The American dead had already been removed, but there were dead Japanese everywhere. Ray winced and had to look away. Ray was a hunter. He had killed deer and stripped their skins, but this was different. It was unnatural, brutal. After seeing these horrible broken bodies, Ray wasn't sure he could ever hunt again. Just like Pa, Ray realized. It had always been Ray's uncle who took him hunting. A sudden thought struck Ray. Was this why his pa had argued so strongly against him enlisting? Had his father actually been trying to protect Ray from becoming the monster he had become? Mortar shells exploded along the road, and Ray and his squad dove face down into the muck. Mud and rock geysered up around them, and the earth shook with the thunder of artillery. The Japanese were shooting at them in the daylight. This never happened up north. Into the foxholes, Big John bellowed, and they leaped into trenches that had been dug and redug a dozen times since Love Day a month ago. Ray held onto his helmet while the mortars fell all around them with the rain. Zimmer, let me see that letter you got from the Missouri DOT, Big John hollered. Zimmer didn't understand it, neither did anyone else, but he handed it over anyway. Big John took a grease pencil out of his pocket and scrawled the word deceased across the envelope in block letters. There you go, Big John said. Now you can send that back to them in advance and they won't bother you no more.